knowledge, responsibility, teamwork, leadership, communication, competence. But what is competence?
Oh shit. Start again. Competence. But what is competence? It is having enough knowledge and ability to do something in a successful and efficient way without the help of others or without the help of external influence. Before we go any further, we found some old footage we'd like to show you that discusses the importance of competence. Roll clip. Let me quickly talk about the importance of competence. My hardy crew and my brave and adventurous self have traveled deep within the heart of the city, down in our sewers. Why, you may ask? Well, let me paint you a picture. The sewer network does a lot of important work to make sure our city is still functioning. A lot of work that our above ground dwellers take for granted. So it's very important that our sewers are maintained and held at a very high standard. With competence as a medical student and a future medical professional, we need to make sure we're constantly learning, practicing, revising, and reflecting to build our medical skills and our knowledge so that in the future and during our school as well, we can continue to help patients and give them the best and safest care possible. It's not work that everybody loves to do, but it's important work nonetheless. Hence the dirty work. And sometimes the importance of this work can be boggled down and forgotten due to the pressures of life around us. But in that case, in both scenarios, we just have to take a second to look deep inside. You never know what you might find. May he rest in peace. In my eyes, there are three types of competence. Competence in the way you conduct yourself, competence in the way you learn, and competence in the practical sense. Let's go over some ways the GMC's good medical practice tells you to conduct yourself as a medical student. Conducting yourself not only as a medical student, but also as a future doctor revolves heavily around respect. Ensure that you're treating your patients and your coworkers properly. No discrimination of any kind. No racism. No racist people! No sexism. No sexy people! You know the rest. Also, ensure that you have your patient's consent. We can loosely use the tea analogy for this type of consent as well. Make sure your patient wants tea. Voluntary. A patient needs to voluntarily participate in a medical exam or procedure. Make sure your patient knows what's in the tea. Knowledge. The patient needs to have enough information about the pros and cons of the medical procedure or examination, as well as why it is medically necessary. And make sure your patient is able to have tea. Competence. The patient needs to be able to make the decision. Different kind of tea, you dirty-minded little bastard. Tardiness is not appreciated. Dress well, act professionally, take clear and concise notes, and understand the rules and regulations of all situations you may be in, such as on placements, on rotations, and in school. Know who to go to, who to report to, where to go if something is wrong, this, that, blah, 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 blah. It's not my job to explain this to you. Part of being competent is doing your own work. That is a very brief and general overview to that aspect of things. I'm sure it has been covered extensively in your schooling and that you understand it well enough. Now, competence in learning is something that we have all been developing
since we were little and first started school.
Everyone learns differently, but the good medical practice presents it in a way that I decided to water down and make simpler. EAR, or engage, advise, and reflect. Engage in your classes, lessons, training, and any type of teaching. Get advice from professors, supervisors, trainers, and anyone around you. And reflect. Reflecting can really show you where you did good or bad and help point out the weaker areas of your medical practice. Keeping these reflections for years to come can also show how much you have improved over time. Also, make sure that you are constantly updating your medical knowledge as times change. Now, time to get into the nitty-gritty. Competence in the sense that I'm sure that you were all hoping for. The practical sense. Sorry for all the waffling. I need to get the watch time up and the ad revenue.
Do you suffer from incompetence? Try EAR. Engage, advise, reflect.
All registered doctors need to know, be honest about, and work within their limits. The same applies to us students. But if you're treating a patient or giving them advice, you have to be under the supervision of a registered healthcare professional. And anyone under your care needs to know that you are a student and know your level of competence so that they can consent to it. To go back to the consent talk we had earlier, knowledge. They need to know your level of skill when it comes to whatever you are performing, so they have the adequate knowledge to consent to the procedure. You are still just a medical student and you're still learning. It's okay. It's okay to make mistakes now, to learn from them, and ask for help when needed. This is the time to do it. You have a bunch of support around you, and everyone just wants to see you excel in your medical career. Only do what you have been taught to do and feel confident in doing. If you don't think you can do something or want to learn how to do something, don't be scared to ask. Like I said, everyone around you just wants to help you further your skills. That's why they are there. And learning all these new skills will accumulate over time and build your competence. If you feel that that person isn't available, bring it up with your school or the organizer of your placements/rotations, and they will personally see to it that you have access to that help you need. Do not feel as if you can't ask for help or learn more. That will only affect your own ability to practice medicine in the future. As you get more experience and get closer to graduating, you may be expected to take on more responsibilities. Maybe even pass it down to other students. Still with supervision, of course. You will not be able to take on these responsibilities if you're not at the level you are expected to be at. Let me show you a quick clip that shows the difference between competence and incompetence. Once again, roll clip.
Watch how Mr. Incompetent on the right rushes into everything, more confident than he should be. He doesn't know what he's doing. He just lobs his arms back, while Mr. Competent takes his time and knows exactly what he's doing. Mr. Incompetent jumps too soon and enters the kick too early. Look at this amazing height and timing on the right. Mr. Incompetent isn't ready for this landing and puts his hands down. A big no-no. He wasn't ready, not prepared in the end, and he got hurt. Mr. Competent, on the other hand, spots the ground and prepares for the landing. Just steps it off like nothing.
I hope my dramatized version painted a good picture as to the differences of being competent or not. Mr. Competent did all his work and had all the help he needed to get to where he needed to be. Well, Mr. Incompetent clearly didn't. He could have asked a coach for help, he could have seen what went wrong the first time, and he could have done it in a safer environment. The coaches, your supervisors and teachers, seeing what went wrong is all the reflection. Practicing in your clinical classes is the safer environment. Do you see what I'm getting at? To officially wrap everything up, let's have a quick Q&A with questions directly from the GMC, hosted here on the Kinda Late Show. Hello everybody. Welcome to the Kinda Late Show. As you know, I'm your host, Hamza, and I'll be asking some questions the GMC has suggested for us to answer. To answer these questions, I have a special guest with me here tonight, Hamza. Hello everyone. I'm also Hamza. Good evening, Hamza. Can I just say, you're looking very good today. Thank you. You're also looking great yourself. Thank you. Thank you. Let's get into these questions. Good medical practice states that doctors must recognize and work within the limits of your competence. But what does this mean for medical students? Well, working in your limits means just that. Only do what you're able to do and know how to do. With a medical student as opposed to a doctor, you just need to make sure you have a supervisor with you and that the patient you are treating knows that you're a student and your level of competence. And hey, maybe you do know something, but that does not mean that you won't make a mistake or can't take advice. That's an amazing answer. What are the limits of a medical student's competence? Well, I could technically say there are no limits aside from the ones you put on yourself. If you've learned, practiced, and feel confident doing a certain medical exam or procedure, go for it. Granted, once again, you have to have supervision and the patient needs to agree. If there's something you don't know, ask. Talk about competence. He most certainly is. Question numero 3. What can a student do on clinical placements and what can they not do? Well, when a doctor wants to do anything medical, there are two people involved, the doctor and the patient. The doctor needs to know that they can do what is proposed and are willing to, and the patient needs to know what's going to happen and give the doctor consent. With a student, there are three people, the student, the supervisor, and the patient. You need to be confident in your competence to conduct the medical examination. The patient needs to understand that you are not a doctor and how much you do know, and the supervisor needs to trust you enough to believe you are fit to do what has been proposed. They may ask you to walk them through it or do it a couple times before they fully trust you, but if they see that you're competent, then it's all up to them. Very insightful. And final question. Under what circumstances might a student be asked to work beyond the limits of their competence, and how should they respond? Oh, that's tricky. Well, in normal circumstances, a student should not be asked to do something outside of their own knowledge. If your supervisor does ask you to do something you do not feel confident in or you do not know, let them know that. If you want to as well, it doesn't hurt to ask to be taught how to do it and learn from them before taking the reins. But if you feel they're insisting that you do this and possibly putting the patient at risk by doing so, this is a concern that needs to be raised with the necessary parties. It will be different for everyone, but ensure you do know who to go to when a situation like this does arise. Well, that's all the questions I have for today. You can all read further into the good medical practice on the GMC's website at www.gmc-uk.org under ethical guidance and then ethical guidance for doctors. Thank you for your time, Hamza, and thank you for the amazing answers. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Competence affects every aspect of our life. Being a competent employee or student, being a competent parent, being a competent athlete. Do you see what I'm getting at? I also hope I have given you enough facts and now understand what it means to be competent as a medical student. But do not hesitate to read further. The Good Medical Practice is a great place to start as it provides a lot of relevant information that covers a lot more than just competence. It's free to download on the GMC's website, and as I said, I highly recommend checking it out. With all that being said and done, thank you for your time and patience. Roll credits.